Welcome to Unboxing History, where we take a deep dive into the collection of the Galveston County Museum. I'm Christine Hopkins.
And I'm Jodi Wright Gidley, director of the Galveston County Museum. So each episode, we unbox an artifact from our museum's collection, and we talk about the people behind it and the stories behind it.
So today we're doing something related to two really important parts of our history, the 1900 storm and the longest continuously running newspaper in the state of Texas. So Jodi, what do we have?
So we have a typewriter.
Wow.
So this typewriter belonged to RB Spangler. He was an employee at the Galveston Daily News back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. This was an 1891 model, and the special thing about this one was the U-shaped type bar. It'll let you be able to see what you were typing. Earlier typewriters that couldn't let you do that.
Yeah. And the Oliver Company still exists?
Yes, the Oliver Company is still in Chicago. They sell vintage typewriters. They take old typewriters and refurbish them, and they even still sell the typing ribbon for some of the models.
Well, and Mr. Spangler, the owner of this typewriter, was a compositor. For people that don't know, which I didn't know what that was, what is a compositor?
So a compositor is the typesetter for the newspaper. He takes the individual letters and lays them out along with little type illustrations, and it creates the whole page of the paper.
That's incredible. Mm-hmm. I mean, can you imagine how much time that would take?
Yes.
And they were at that time doing papers sometimes in the morning and in the evening.
Yes.
So that's a lot of work for
yes.
Maybe just a few people doing. So tell me a little bit more about Mr. Spangler.
Well, our research shows us some really interesting things. Mr. Spangler came to Texas and started working in the newspaper business in the late 1800s. We found in the city directories in 1903 and 1904 that he was listed as a telegraph editor for the Galveston Daily News here in Galveston. By 1905, the records show he had moved to Navasota and also worked for a newspaper, but he remained involved with Galveston newspapers for a really long time because he was still serving on the union for the typesetter group, and he was very connected to Galveston.
And on that union, there's an interesting fact about the union.
Well, it was one of the very first chartered in Texas.
I mean, that's incredible. Well, so much history here.
Yes. So for 52 years, he worked in the newspaper business. And in 1910, the Galveston Tribune had an article about him and described him. Mr. Spangler is known to every man, woman, and child in Galveston. And although he has, on account of his age, retired from the active life of a printer, he is still one of the most faithful members, never missing a meeting and always ready to lend a helping hand in any work that might be required.
Very nice. Yes. Nice tribute. So one of the things that is important about this typewriter is it would have been used after the 1900 storm. So tell us about his story related to the 1900 storm.
Yeah. So his story is chronicled in the book A Weekend in September that's all about the storm. And so he was working at the newspaper office as the storm was rolling in. He received a telegraph at about 1 a.m. about a storm coming across the Gulf, but there wasn't a whole lot of detail because the telegraph lines were down and those other places too. So he didn't get a lot of detail, but he wanted to. He was hanging on at the newspaper, waiting for new news to come in. And when it didn't come in, he finally decided, well, let me put in the paper what I know about the storm. And it was on page 3. That he wrote about the storm, and he went home at about 3:45 a.m., started heading home. So he's walking home. His newspaper office is downtown on Mechanic. His home is not far from the beach. The water is up to his knees as he approaches home, which didn't really alarm him because it had happened other times before. As we all know, the 1900 storm grew and flooded the island. Him and his family lost his home, but his family members and he survived. He continued to work on the newspaper. So he wrote the articles about the aftermath of the storm. He helped list those people that were missing or still alive. He was a big part of telling that story.
It's interesting to think about the critical role that your local newspaper had at that time and still continues to have.
Still today, yes.
So that brings us to our next guest.
Okay.
So we have Leonard Woolsey here. He's the publisher of the Galveston County Daily News and the president of Southern Newspapers. He's going to tell us a little bit more about the history of the Daily News and their role in chronicling the history of our county. Welcome, Leonard. It's so nice to have you on Unboxing History today. So the Galveston County Daily News, which is now the Daily News, is the longest continuously running newspaper in the state of Texas. I mean, that really is incredible. What was the year it goes back to? Is it
1842?
That's amazing. Well, and we have this incredible artifact that's part of the museum's collection that, was used during the 1900 storm. The Daily News was a critical part of what was happening and covering the news. How would they have done that then? And, what stories have you heard about the 1900 storm and where they were at the time for people that don't know?
Well, it's interesting. And Christina, thank you for having me, and thank you for having the Daily News here. And I got to tell you, folks, this artifact is a jewel, and you need to come down to the Galveston County Museum and see this thing. The truth is that this was used by one of the editors at the Daily News. And, back in that day, you had telegraphs and you had couriers, and you didn't have the internet, and you didn't have cell phones, and you didn't have ways to connect with everybody. And most likely what was occurring is they were getting first and second-hand information at the time. And when the storm came in on the island, as those of us that lived here and followed the history understand, 14, 15, 16 feet surges coming through, washed across the island because the seawall wasn't there yet. Came all the way in downtown. And again, many of us know that the Tremont played a critical role in being the place that citizens were housed because, there were, at one point, you may correct me, more than 1,000 people inside that building trying to stay away from the water. Just down the street was the Daily News, which was the Clayton building that built in 1842. Nicholas Hayes pretty much penned the architecture of Galveston.
For those of you that don't know, that building still stands.
Yes.
It's a beautiful red brick building. It is on Mechanic Street between 21st and 22nd. And, Leonard's actually had a chance to even see it. But, can you imagine? I mean, it's in the downtown, the amount of water. But so Mr. Spangler, the owner of this typewriter, made his way home. He did survive. But, what other things were happening and what's the role of your local news during a crisis situation like that?
Well, we need to rewind to remember that, channels of information were pretty limited at that point. And the Daily News job, which is still the role that it has today, is to write history, to chronicle history. And Mr. Spangler was most likely receiving either telegraphs or handwritten notes about what was going on in the community. And he was what you call a composer. So you'd have the reporters that would write their stories, and they'd write them in longhand, and then they would hand them to a composer who could type and put this in, and from there we go into the production cycle, which is another whole story. But he was the first person to take the handwritten stories and convert them into sentence form and write the original stories that were going to be published in the Daily News. Which if you come to this museum, you'll see a lot of the pages of the Daily News up here chronicling the storm. Even the Daily News would run lists of people that survived and lists of people that had been missing. And again, they were writing history, and that piece of history was coming off of Mr. Spangler's typewriter.
We have all of these different major news stories that have happened in all of the years of our history. What are the ones that stand out to you that the Daily News might have covered?
Well, I think we've covered more than a dozen hurricanes since our inception in 1842. The newspaper was actually 60 years old when the 1900 storm came ashore. And, 1842 makes it one of the oldest existing newspapers in the United States. It's older than the New York Times, older than the Wall Street Journal. So it's, it has been here. And what's interesting is we've covered everything. And you consider in modern history, in the 40s, the great explosion in Texas City.
Yes.
That was some of the things we covered. We've had a lot of hurricane coverage. We've had the Prohibition and gambling period in the 20s and 30s, and then the raids in the 50s. And Galveston's never been short for generating its own kind of news.
That's true. Well, that is true, especially if you think about the Free State. You wonder about what articles might have been included or not included in the local newspaper. So are there any artifacts that the Daily News has as part of your collection or archives?
We do. I've had readers. It's a beautiful thing because there are a lot of readers and subscribers that, that they feel connected to this newspaper, and rightly so because it's their newspaper. And they'll bring in artifacts. Somebody recently brought me front pages from the 1900s that were following the storm. Then I had somebody bring in yellowed, worn, almost maybe even moth-eaten apron that said the Daily News and then like a nickel. And it was what the street vendor would sell. The kids would wear on the street and sell. And so we have that piece. And even if you come by the Daily News, we have the original printing press that the newspaper came off in 1842.
And that's in the lobby.
That's in the lobby. It's a literal, physical, mechanical press. And you can see a piece of living history and touch it.
So why do you think it's important that communities have their local news to kind of chronicle history?
Well, newspapers play a role in a community like it's a fabric, just a thread that goes through fabric. And a newspaper's job, if done correctly, is to put its arms around the community and be as welcoming to as many people as possible, as many opinions as possible, not take a strong point of view. It's their newspaper to collectively talk about their community. You know, today the world is full of news media around the world. This is our community, and that's what the Daily News is all about. Voices from our community, what they think today, and in the future, people will be able to look back and say, Bobby Sue felt this way about this, or this happened on Galveston Island then. I know what happens in Washington, D.C., and New York City, and Tokyo is important. What really matters to us is what's going on in Galveston County. And for us to still have a local and locally owned newspaper is very critical.
Well, thank you, Leonard. Is there anything else that you want to add that you want people to know about as far as resources available through the Daily News and when it comes to research or any other things that you want to add?
Well, I would say as subscribers of the Daily News, we have an interesting model now of print subscribers and digital subscribers. Yes. All of our archives are in our digitals. And people that are subscribers can go in and search our archives for as far back as they want. And we can also direct you to digital versions of these pages that have to deal with the history of the 1900 storm. So our job is to create a sustainable journalism model for this community going forward. And that's our commitment. And we're 183 years old now. And I fully expect it won't be me, but somebody else in 183 years will be leading the charge.
Well, thank you again. And again, thank you, Leonard, for coming and sharing the story. I mean, you think about how closely connected the Daily News is with the history of Galveston and the role that you've played to archive that before we had these museums and before we had these, when you walk around the Galveston County Museum, you'll see articles from the Galveston Daily News all over the walls.
So. One thing about what you touched on there is I read a lot of Western books and Western history, and invariably, every book has multiple references to the Galveston Daily News. It's impossible to read Texas history without reading it through the pages of the Daily News because it was originally there, it was preserved, and it was a depository of what was going on across the entire state. And so, you know, our little local community newspaper makes it possible to tell accurate stories about the history of Texas.
Well, thank you again.
You're welcome, Christine. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.
Oh, we appreciate it. I think every time people come here, they're so surprised at how much is here.
This is a wonderful facility. I encourage everybody on the other side of this, make your way down here and see this museum. It is a beautiful experience.
Thanks again. Thank you for tuning in to Unboxing History, presented by the Galveston County Museum. You can see RB Spangler's Oliver Typewriter at the Galveston County Museum. And remember to subscribe to Unboxing History everywhere you listen to your podcasts and find us on YouTube.
And we also invite you to follow us on social media and join our email list where you'll receive news about new exhibits and things going on here at the museum. And remember, the Galveston County Museum is free to visit Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 10 to 4. On Tuesdays and Thursdays are the days that you can schedule private tours here or our padlock mystery game. So give us a call, check out our website, www.galvestoncountyhistory.org. Thank you.